Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Collar here, and joining the show, Drew Magary from Defector. And I know that Drew, based on text messages, based on tweets, is through the roof about this year's offseason for the Minnesota Vikings. So, Drew, I want you to explain to me your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts over the last couple of weeks as we have transitioned in a seminal moment in Vikings history out of the Kirk Cousins era and into a new and uncharted universe of National Football League football for the Minnesota Vikings. How you feeling, buddy?
First of all, I'm just so excited to talk to you about this because you gotta understand, I got fucking nobody to talk to about the Vikings. I don't live in Minnesota anymore. My family, they could give half a fuck about football. Like the only Viking they could probably name is Justin Jefferson, and that's only because I have like 9 of his jerseys, and like all it says is Jefferson on the back. So they may not even remember what his first name is, except they do hear me shouting, Justin, anytime he makes a catch when I'm watching down in the basement. Anyway, when the news broke on Monday, whatever, 2 Mondays ago, I don't know, that Kirk was going to sign with Atlanta, which it was one of those things where it's like, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. I sense that it's going to happen, but I need it to happen so that I know that I'm done with this because, Kirk's a good quarterback, a professional, unless you ask him to get vaccinated. Like he's like admired in the locker room. Brian O'Neill loves him. Justin loves him. And Justin appears to genuinely like him in a way that Stephon Diggs definitely didn't. So, it was nice to have Kirk there, but it was never good enough. And more of the point, we have spent my entire lifetime trying to win a title with other people's quarterbacks. So Kirk, Favre, Randall Cunningham, the list goes, Jim McMahon, fucking Warren. It goes on and on and on and on. There's never been a homegrown quarterback in my lifetime, with the exception of Dante. And Dante had issues. Like Dante was like, the fog of, or the, I should say, sort of the sheen of memory. It filters out the bad stuff about Dante, the fact that he fumbled all the fucking time, just stuff like that. And, and he didn't last. He had a knee injury back when knee injuries could actually end your career. And so the idea that we can potentially move up in the draft, and that became more pronounced on Friday when Kwesi made the move into the first round, right? The idea that we can move up into the draft and get someone who will be the quarterback for a decade and be very good at it. That's never happened in my lifetime. And I can kill for that. It would be so exciting. And it's all I think about all the time. And the only person I ever talk to about it in this house is myself, because nobody else gives a shit. So it's very nice to just be here and just say, wee to you.
Well, and from my perspective, it's a little bit different, obviously, because you are a lifelong Vikings fan. And
Yes.
For me, I dropped in 2016 to start covering the team professionally. But I will say, from my perspective, I just have watched a malaise set over Vikings fans. When I first got here, the excitement was sky high because everyone believed that Teddy Bridgewater and the Vikings and Zimmer were going to build on what they did in 2015, and they ultimately did 2 years later. And then when Kirk comes to town, I think there was half the fan base who thought this is the last step, and half of the fan base who thought we just made a huge mistake and should have run it back with whoever, should have brought Case Keenum, or should have traded for Alex Smith, or should have drafted Lamar Jackson, or whatever number of other options they had in 2018. And I think that it went away so quickly, the idea that a Super Bowl was possible, but then it just continued to drag out year after year.
Right.
I think it really took its toll because the belief was ended pretty quickly in 2018. And then for a flicker in New Orleans, it was back, and then it was gone just as quick as it had started the following week in San Francisco. And then it was 4 straight years of never really believing in it, outside of maybe one late afternoon after they beat the Buffalo Bills to go 8-1. And those hopes were quickly dashed the following week. So this, to me, represents the first time I can remember in a real long time where there has been a long stretch of belief that something special could come from this. And it's just been so noticeable by the reaction of people like yourself that, yeah, is there risk that goes along with it? Of course, major risk that goes with it. But there's also the hope that has been found here by Vikings fans that just has not existed over the last few years.
Yeah, and like a lot of those people are allergic to hope, right? Like I have a colleague at Defector, Justin Ellis, who's also a Vikings fan, but he's a lot more guarded about it in Vikings fans way. And I talked to them about it when we were having drinks, or like he had a drink and I had a beer after popping a gummy or whatever. And he explained it to me. He was like, well, with Kirk, it was just like, I'm seeing the same shit over and over again. Like I can only get so excited because 6 years, it's still large enough sample size. You know what you're getting, and it's not going really anywhere. You're running in place, right? And I had the privilege, that's the wrong word, but I live in Maryland. So I've been tracking Kirk throughout his entire career because he started here in Washington and he was drafted, everybody knows the story. He's drafted in the 4th round in the same draft as RG3 when he went in the 1st round. And I really admired when Netflix, covered him in the quarterback series when he said like, yeah, my draft experience kind of sucked. Like I liked that. I liked that honesty. And then, he goes through the motions here and he rises up and he becomes a very prolific, good passer for a town that desperately needed it. And for his reward was Dan Snyder treating him like absolute dog shit. Right. So we get him and it's like, I was like, okay, he's the best of the 4 options. He's better than Case because Case will fall off. He's better than Sam Bradford because Sam Bradford's made of like sticks and glue, right? And then he's better than Teddy because I have no idea. This was when Teddy had not come back from the injuries. But no idea if he was like what he was going to be. I think Teddy's journeyman career after that, I actually do think that that's probably what he would have become because even when he took us to the playoffs in 2015, he was not a convincing franchise quarterback, even though I loved him. Like I loved his demeanor, all that. Anyway, so when we got Kirk, I knew it was the best of the 4 options. And I was really happy that I was happy that Washington had talked themselves out of having him as their quarterback. And I really thought, oh, if we win a Super Bowl with this guy, that's fucking hilarious. Like I can't wait to rub that in Commanders fans, or, it was a different name at the time, rub it in their faces. And, and the joke was on me, of course, because even though the Commanders have just sucked absolute shit ever since he left, we've been trapped in the exact same kind of hell that they were in, a very unique kind of hell where you're competent and you're supposed to like it, but you kind of don't, and you don't want to deal with it anymore. And, the idea that we're going to get someone like Drake Maye, who you can tell has the swagger, you can tell he's just like, don't give a fuck. Like that's the guy. And the idea that we would get someone like that is just very exciting to me, especially because, because we have Justin, because we have Darisaw, because we have Addison, unless he gets thrown into the trade bucket. And we have, I still think O'Connell's a good coach, and I like the coaching staff, particularly the Flores on defense. And I think Kwesi, over the past 2 weeks has finally shown vision. I think that's what was missing, particularly, the first year, because he had to extend Kirk. He kind of had to. I don't think he wanted to. He had to. And then he made the shitty draft trade and drafted Lewis Seen, who sucks, and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I need to make sure that, I need to make sure Wall Street here knows what the fuck he's doing. And it was halfway clear last year when he jettisoned Kendricks and Cook and all those guys, and they were all correct moves. All of them were right. And then he went full bore when free agency started. And I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's done fucking around, and they're letting him do the job. They're not like the Wilfs are not staying over and being like, oh, well, we have to have Kirk for 3 more years because we need to win 9 games a year into infinity so that we're not embarrassing, because that would be bad. They're letting him take a chance. And the idea that we are poised, and I think it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen in my heart, that we're going to make, the ballsiest move in my lifetime. Like I can't think of a ballsier move than giving away the farm to move up to 2 or to 3. It's going to be just 3. It ain't going to be the 2. To get a guy, I mean, outside of like what, signing Brett Favre. Well, Favre was washed by then. So it was like, you know, it's always a flyer of a chance. It's not the full investment. And this could be a full investment. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the gutsiest move other than what we expect to come is drafting Randy Moss in 1998, right?
Yeah.
You know,
when they didn't need a receiver, you know,
right.
and I think that was the ballsiest move they ever made. And of course it paid off in spades. And you could say that signing Kirk was because it was the first fully guaranteed contract, but you know, he was already, you know, that contract was already obsolete within what, 2 years? Like, you know, like the contract he signed with Atlanta, you know, is what he's getting $45 million a year. Like that's nuts. And like to watch other people talk up the Falcons now that they have them, I'm like, I'm so glad that's not my team.
Well, you'll appreciate that Mike Clay of ESPN in his first projections that he put out had the Atlanta Falcons at 9 wins and finishing with the 12th best record in the league, which is that's that circle of hell that you were talking about. And maybe
that's dead on it. And it's like, oh, he's surrounded by weapons now. He's got Kyle Pitts, who's never been good. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. Like, there ain't no magic going on down there.
And I'm not going to focus too much on that situation because that's someone else's problem to cover.
Yep.
But, you know, when you sign Darnell Mooney or something, I'm like, is that Kendall Wright that I hear there? Is that right? It's
who cares?
They're kind of doing the same sort of thing. But, you know, the entire Kirk era to me, when I think back about it, I'll probably think of all the problems they weren't able to fix. And like whether, you know, misses in the draft or the free agent money they didn't have because of Cousins, because they paid Anthony Barr too much and they paid Kyle Rudolph too much. And he wasn't the only one, but it was always the left guard they couldn't fix. It was always the defensive tackle they couldn't find after Linval Joseph. It was always the shutdown corner they couldn't replace with Xavier Rhodes. And the issue was with Kirk, you have to thread that needle. You have to hit on the Cam Dantzler draft pick, or Holton Hill has to become a great corner from undrafted free agency or something. And if it doesn't happen, there's no way to correct that mistake. And I think already you sort of see even in the structure of some of the contracts where Jonathan Grenard's not making much this year, but next year, you know, his cap hit goes way up because they have the space next year to be able to have a guy whose cap hit goes way up. And you can fix a problem when you lose a Danielle Hunter with an expensive answer rather than saying Marcus Davenport has to be the answer and hopes and dreams. So instead of flyers and well, maybe this guy will become whatever, you just get a guy who already is good and you pay him that amount of money because you have it. Now, one of the little games I like to play on the show, Drew, is called Talk Me Into. And I want to play with you where I ask you to talk me into something. You ask me to talk you into something. Okay. I want you to talk me into it being a good idea to trade another first round pick along with the 2 they own to get Drake Maye, rather than trading the 2 they have to move up to 4 to get JJ McCarthy. Talk me into, even if you don't believe it, talk me into it being a better idea. That's the game. You don't have to believe it. In fact, that could be part of the game.
No, I 1,000% believe it. You know,
okay, well then
it's a layup.
It seems like those are the options. So talk me into it.
Okay. To me, it's not even close. Like, of course you do it. Like, I want 3. I'm not going to be happy with 4, and I'm not sure they'd be happy with 4. I know that there was a lot of scuttlebutt because they're arranging a private workout with JJ McCarthy, but that's just due diligence, right? You have to examine the entire class. But I don't think Kwesi, who has made all of these moves with confidence, you know, this past week and change, you know, he and Kevin O'Connell have made moves that, you know, are not the moves you make when you're terrified of getting fired. They've made like, okay, we're going to be here a while. This is what we want our roster to look like. This is the roster we want to go forward with. And I think Drake Maye is so obviously that quarterback because he can scoot, he can get himself out of jams. He's got the arm to hit any point on the 3 layers of the field, right? And McCarthy, we don't know, right? He could be brilliant, or he could be fucking AJ McCarron. You don't know because he wasn't in a spot. He was playing for a dominant team. He never lost a regular season game. and he's playing the likes of Northwestern and stuff like that. And he acquits himself nicely in a few tight spots, but not enough where it's the consistent sort of onslaught that you're going to get when you're playing in the NFL, right? You're going to get your ass kicked a lot in the NFL. And Drake Maye playing for a well, not a but like, a second rate North Carolina team proved that he could make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And that's what you need, because Kirk, like you just said, Kirk is good, but he's not good enough to patch over the holes that you have elsewhere on the roster. And great quarterbacks do that, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Josh Allen, blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, well, everything else is falling apart, but we have that guy, so we can still win. That's the guy you need. And I feel like Drake can be that kind of guy, particularly with Kevin as his coach. Whereas with McCarthy, there's just far more uncertainty. And what he does have on tape, and you watched JT O'Sullivan's breakdown of it, he was not all that impressed, and that concerns me, because if I'm going to listen to anybody's sort of NFL edge matchup breakdown of a quarterback, it's going to be JT O'Sullivan. It's going to be Kurt Warner. It's going to be JT O'Sullivan. Everybody else is usually like some weird Giants fan who has a YouTube channel or whatever the fuck. That doesn't. I have no interest in that. And so his concerns are mine. I want to make sure that this guy can make the throws, and I want to make sure he can get out of the jam. And I don't know that he's ever been in the kind of jam. Like he played okay in the Alabama game. Like, but again, someone else, I think you pointed it out, but other people pointed out as well. There was never a time when Michigan was, when it was tight at the end, and they were like, we need to rely on our stud quarterback right now. Because they didn't have to, because they had a running game that went for 1,000,000 yards a fucking game. So they were like, we'll just hand off to Blake Corum on 3rd and 6, and he'll get 19 yards, and that'll be groovy. So there's a lot to prove with JJ, and May has a lot to prove too. But I'm much more able to talk myself into the guy who's taller, with a bigger arm, who has proven that he can play in adverse conditions on a much more regular basis than JJ has.
I think you have done a very good job of talking me into it. And I have felt the same way about Maye versus McCarthy, where it's so cliche draft wise to say ceiling, but I do feel like that. I do feel like who can be the game changer? Who can be the unstoppable force? Like, is it possible? And it's not a guarantee that Drake Maye can be an unstoppable force because of his size, because of his arm talent. And we've seen that player even be just okay, but yet also have that gear. And that's why I compare him to Matthew Stafford or Eli Manning, because even though those guys screw up a lot and make mistakes and have bad games, there is a gear that they can hit that's just different. And, in thinking about McCarthy and quarterbacks he reminds me of, the other day I mentioned Matt Hasselbeck, of like somebody who's really good, but did they have an extra level to their game that they could take you themselves, putting the team on their back? Now, it's not impossible that he becomes that. We've just never seen it. And what sort of doesn't compute with me is if it was there and Michigan never used it, they'd be pretty crazy, right? Oh, well, they just had a great running game. And then, like, wait, you had this superstar and you really never wanted to put the gas down? That just doesn't really add up to me.
I mean, you could pin it a little bit on Harbaugh because he's that kind of coach, but I don't remember. I mean, he brought back the band in LA. He's going to have Greg Roman, and they're going to make the same sort of Greg Roman mistakes. But, he does have Justin Herbert. He has no fucking wideouts. He will have Roma Dunze or Marvin Harrison Jr., in a couple of months from now. But, he has a history of favoring ground and pound as opposed to other coaches. So, maybe he did McCarthy a disservice there, but he's also an insane person who would do anything to win. So if he knew his quarterback could throw for 400 yards a game, he would probably have them do it. So, there's a lot for me to worry about, but at the same time, I want to be like excited that just there's going to be someone new, So, because I told you ages ago, I was like, any of the top 6, like anybody, like I'll take them. But now, of course, we're in the we're in the middle of the shit. And it's like, well, no, while we're here, I can afford to be a little picky. And now I have my own little pecking order.
Well, and that it's also the game of talk me into. So that was your job there to make that case as strongly as you can. That's not to say if they had McCarthy that you would be unhappy with it, because that still is coming away with the cheat code of the rookie quarterback contract and someone who could work effectively with O'Connell. And I do believe there's more there to his physical skill than he was able to show. But would it be, the real fundamental question is, would you pay that extra first to get the guy that you absolutely dreamed of versus not paying it for someone you'd be happy with? And to me, I say, yes, pay the price, and you'll never pay the extra $1,000, whatever, for the car you actually want rather than the one you can afford. What would you like me to talk you into regarding the Vikings?
Well, I mean, that's just it. I was going to fuck you. I say, talk me into JJ McCarthy being a good quarterback.
I will do this easily. So here's the thing that I know about JJ McCarthy is that he is a good athlete and that he's got a strong arm. He does have a strong arm. I mean, he threw the ball, not that this has always correlated, but he threw the ball 62 miles an hour at the combine. Josh Allen threw it 63. Now, that doesn't mean that you have a perfect deep ball, because Kirk threw it 59 at the combine. But what it does mean is when he can plant himself and put everything into that football, he can really laser the ball. So that is NFL caliber stuff. You've seen it in his tape all over the place. If there's somebody coming on a slant route or, a 20-yard dig or something, and he's got to gear up and let it go, he can absolutely make the throws that Kevin O'Connell is going to want him to make on a consistent basis, I think. It's really around the edges. It's does he do something absolutely wild off of schedule? Not usually. Does he have this beautiful, pristine deep ball? I don't really think so. Some of the details on the shorter stuff, not always perfect, but not always perfect is every single prospect that ever comes out. And if we were to go through scouting reports of quarterbacks that have worked out and not worked out, and I don't love to use this guy because of what happened with him eventually, but Deshaun Watson dropped in the draft because people thought that he was mostly just a runner and kind of like had a noodle arm. And he never had the strongest arm, and then became a franchise quarterback who put them in position to compete for Super Bowls. There's so many things that we nitpick away because we're looking at the same guys over and over and over and looking for every single flaw potentially in them, when we have to realize that if he's working with McCown, O'Connell, whatever private quarterback coach he's going to have, that this seems to be a very, very dedicated person to being a great NFL quarterback. He just exudes that about the way that he plays. And he's already had an NFL-ish experience, so he kind of knows what it's like to play under pressure of a nutty coach. So if they draft him, I think if you were doing some sort of odds that Maye works out versus McCarthy works out, that they could take you deep in the playoffs and compete for a Super Bowl, it's probably not that different. And so that would be the counter argument. And the reason not to trade that extra first is that from a pure percentages perspective, and this may be Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell having this discussion, from a pure numbers perspective, the third quarterback versus the fourth quarterback is probably not that different. And if I'm talking you into it, then I will finish by saying it's not worth trading that extra first round pick for, even though I don't exactly believe that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to touch, because I have a couple of Michigan fans at Defector, Lauren Tyson, and my three, Anantha Rahman. And, they both had issues with his touch, that, that he had a powerful arm, but whether or not he could pepper it just the right way, like, that's really important, right? You need the guy who throws not just a laser into a tight spot, because, you don't want the guy who pulls a far and throws a fucking 100-mile-an-hour fastball when he doesn't need to, and it bounces right off the receiver's hands and gets intercepted. So you need the guy who can put some touch on it. And that was a Bill Walsh thing too. Like, Bill Walsh was like, it was very important to him that a quarterback have proper touch on his throws. And that's a huge variety of throws that you have to make. And you have to have some sort of instinct. I'm sure there's coaching to it. I'm sure Kevin O'Connell is the sort of guy who can get it out of you, but I do think that it is an innate talent to, like, it's called arm talent, right? Like, it's sort of a weird phrase and it sounds kind of silly, but like, I think that is something that is just sort of there. and I want to make sure it's there before we draft him and not afterward.
No, that's a good point. And they call it layering the football is another way to put it. And
no, I like that term.
Yeah, I mean, because you can really, when they say layering, you can envision it, right? You can see the linebacker, you can see having to guide the ball over a certain guy into, and when some of the highlights are McCarthy throwing like a crow hop laser beam that's super low and barely fits in a window, I'm like, did he mean to do that? Or did that just kind of end up that way? That was the Justin Fields thing a little bit. Look at all these throws into tight windows. Did you mean to get it there, or was that just kind of like it got there by accident? But
this is shit that's really important with Justin, because you know Justin, oddly, it's weird to say that Justin's not a deep threat, but he's not Randy Moss, right? He's not like he doesn't have the electricity where the ball goes up in the air and off the screen and you are like, oh my God, I know who's at the other end of it when the camera pans over. He's a different kind of player where he makes these fabulous receptions, always like 25 yards down the field. And Kirk was good at getting him the ball that way. Like Kirk was really talented with that. And that is what the next guy needs to have. He needs to have that. And really, I almost am like, look, just bring these guys to Justin and have them throw the ball at Justin and have Justin tell you which one he likes the best and just draft that guy, right? Because like Justin's going to know. Like Justin's not going to be like, Justin's not the sort of asshole who's just going to be like, oh, well, he was nice to me and we like the same music. Like he wants a quarterback who's going to get him the ball in the right spot at the right time so that he can score a touchdown and win the game, because that's what he wants. And that's what I want. And that's what the Vikings want.
I don't think it ever left him playing with Joe Burrow. The playmaking, the accuracy, the swag, the intelligence, like it really, like that's going to be the standard for him. And I think that Drake Maye is more of a Burrow type thrower with the touch on the football, but he also has some wild elements of his game. So that is my next talk me into Drew, you not being upset next year if they have to play Sam Darnold, and not losing your mind and tearing out your hair and breaking your glasses in frustration if Sam Darnold has some rocky times and it's not a great season. Well, quarterback of the future X does not play. Like, talk me into you being able to handle, and Vikings fans being able to handle, a transition year before we get to quarterback of the future.
I mean, that's easy to answer because it's sort of overdue, right? Like, I think you were of the mind. I'm always been in the mind, and I've said before a million times, I don't think tanking works. I don't believe in tanking. But you were always of the mind that, well, you can tank a little bit and have it help, right? So if you have a year where Darnold is your full-time starter, and I think they signed Darnold to be a backup. I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, if you have a year where Darnold is a starter and you eat shit and you only win 5 games, it sucks to endure, but I'll already know that it's all in service of 2025. Like, the moves right now have been made, they're good moves for 2024, but they are, like you said, they have an eye toward 2025. So with that in mind, how they manage the roster during the season would also be an indication of that. So I think I'd be all right with that, because again, I'm so used to, well, first of all, I'm used to losing vital games, right? Because I'm a Vikings fan, and I'm used to having other people's quarterbacks as my quarterback. Like, that's old hat. Been doing it for decades now. Totally fine. And I can deal, because I'll know that something new is on the horizon. And that's been the problem with, the past 3-4 years of Kirk, where it's like, I've spent a lot of time waiting for Kirk to leave, right? Like 2019, I was like, fine, okay, bring him back. But after that, like when he got COVID and they got housed by Green Bay in the COVID season, I was like, I was done. I wanted it to be done, and I've been wanting it to be done ever since then, and it's finally done. And that euphoria, that's going to stay for a good long time. I can guarantee you that. Because the other thing is that we signed Aaron Jones, who's a fantastic running back, and unlike the Packers, we're probably going to actually use him, even though KO hates the run. He might actually warm up to the run if Sam Darnold's fucking up all over the place. So I'm okay with, I think I can be okay with that. And I've been able to talk myself into a lot of dumb shit as a Vikings fan. Like I talked myself into like Brashad Breeland being a decent corner. He was not. So I can talk myself into Darnold being like, oh, well, he might have a Case Keenum sort of thing going on. Why not? So yes, I can do that.
Well, you were excited yesterday about Shaq Griffin, so that will probably never change.
Right, and that was before I was reminded that he was cut mid-season by the Texans.
Yeah, I didn't want to burst any bubbles there, but
No,
he's a
right.
guy. He's a guy on the team.
You know what it is? It's just if it's the position that they need.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, oh, they need a corner. They signed a corner. All right, that's good. They need a guard. They signed a guard. Oh, that's good. You know, that's
I'm going to tell you the truth. I've been spending the morning before we were talking here watching Sam Darnold's end of 2022 and his game against San Francisco. And I came away with feeling like there would probably be 4 to 5 to 6 games where you can't believe he's an NFL quarterback. And then probably 8 to 10 where he plays good enough to win a game for you. That there are things that he does that are really good. And
he did it against us. He did it against us.
Yeah.
Like we had that game sealed, but we didn't because Sam Darnold marched him down the field and put it to overtime. Kirk won it, but you know, it was still like one of the classic Vikings game where you win, but it's like, did it really have to be that fucking hard?
Yes, I do remember that quite well. But the thing is, like, he was actually running their offense on time with rhythm in his passing and made some really nice throws off balance. And some throws that I had to say, Kirk ain't making that one 25 yards down the field off balance and things like that. He ran a couple RPOs for first downs. A quarterback running. Haven't seen that in a while.
Off balance is a big thing, I think. Because I saw that a lot on the tape with Maye, where you know he's sort of in the grass and you're like, oh, this play's a goner, and then he would get it out at the last second, and that's the exact kind of guy, you know. So I see what you're saying there. If he can do some off balance throws, that'd be very nice. But I also know it would be fleeting, right?
Yeah. That's my point. Is entertainment value actually might be high. Like, do that. It could be kind of a wild roller coaster ride to 8 and 9. And not all 8 and 9s are created equal.
Right.
And so this sort of fun 8 and 9 with Sam Darnold, where no one really cares about this season and we're waiting for Drake Maye next year, like that could all be pretty entertaining to find out about new guys. And I even think last year, halfway through the season, hey, we found out about Josh Metellus. We found out about Ivan Pace, that these are pieces for the future that we didn't know about. And
I enjoyed that.
That could be a fun process going through that. So I think that it would be manageable for Vikings fans. The only thing I would be concerned about is if you said 5 games and then people start to turn on the coach, because we already saw that last year and there was no reason for it. It's Nick Mullins, it's Josh Dobbs, and there was some validity to the criticisms. But if people start to get antsy with those guys at quarterback about Kevin O'Connell, if they were to win 5 games, then and they still weren't playing the rookie, like there is a scenario where this gets a little dicey or uncomfortable, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But again, we're talking in hypotheticals here. And if they draft a rookie, the rookie's starting, there's going to be a fake training camp battle and all that. But like, you know how it's going to go. And if ownership, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but if ownership says, okay, we believe in this GM, we believe in this coach, and if people are bitching, they're going to bitch, whatever, who cares? Like, we're going to stick with them. Then that says a lot to me, that they're willing to endure bullshit, to have continuity, and to see a plan through, to see a vision through. Then I'm all for it. That's good, because you fire Kevin. All right, well, who's the next guy? Like, what you hired the corpse of Belichick or something like that? Like make this work. It's only been 2 years. And I would rather try to see this through more than anything.
All right. I will talk you into one more, then I have a fun Vikings questions for you. So what do you want to know? What do you want me to talk you into?
Oh, okay. Talk me into Bo Nix.
Okay. I can do that. So Bo Nix is a little bit unspectacular when it comes to his tools. There isn't one thing where you go, oh, he's 6'5", or oh, he's throws it over them mountains or something like that. But I think what we saw last year from Brock Purdy is that under the right circumstances, somebody who is an executor of the offense, who can make a play at the right time. And let's keep in mind, Bo Nix ran like a 4.6 coming out of high school, 5-star athlete. Like, this isn't some sort of journeyman caliber type of non-athlete quarterback. He ran for 500-600 yards in college, if college would get its rushing statistics right. But he routinely made plays with his legs and out of structure. But one of the things that really, really impresses me about Bo Nix is that in college, he got the football out of his hands in about 2.3 seconds, which is NFL caliber. You don't see that very often from college quarterbacks. You don't see it from somebody like Drake Maye. It usually takes a little longer. You definitely don't see it from Jaden Daniels, who's taken a lot of sacks. He doesn't take sacks. He is an executor of the offense. And I did talk to a former NFL scout who really likes Bo Nix. Like, he would have him as a first-round draft pick. He was his, I think, QB4 ahead of JJ McCarthy, because he called him that sort of field general type of leader. So is he ever going to be the guy that you're just like, hey, it's all on you, it's all on your back? Probably not. But neither is Jalen Hurts, neither is Brock Purdy, neither was Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, under the right circumstances, we have seen quarterbacks like this who, if they could handle it all mentally and get the football out and not take bad sacks and not turn it over, that they can win a hell of a lot of games. And if you're in the AFC, that wouldn't be a good argument, but you're in the NFC, and there's, look, I mean, is Bo Nix's ceiling like Dak Prescott? I mean, maybe, right? Like, and just not one skill that's over the top, but really intellectual there, good accuracy. I mean, I think that Bo Nix might be a guy that we just ogle over other people's tools so much and their potential so much that you sort of miss what's right in front of you. And I've always sort of been in the camp that if they shocked us and took Bo Nix, I'd be like, all right, well, he's going to get the ball out of his hands toward Justin Jefferson, and that's pretty darn successful.
Well, I think I'd be all right with it if it came with, if they stood pat with the 2 picks, which I really don't think they're going to do. And they got Nix with the 2nd pick, and then they got some stallion like Verse or Dallas Turner like with the 11th pick, or the Toledo cornerback. Like, okay, like I can sort of see that, but it's almost like I don't know. It's like an album that has like 2 really good songs on it, but no like timeless one. And I need the Welcome to the Jungle on there. I need the Immortal track.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I think it's a little hard to talk you into Bo Nix because he's the least flashy of all the guys. I mean, even with Michael Penix, when he lets it loose, I mean, it's really something to see.
Yeah, I love watching him throw. I love seeing it. Like,
Are you okay if they stay at 11 though? Or are you going to not be happy? Yeah, I'm not happy with that either.
Like on draft night, like I'll piss and moan, or I won't. I'll be like, I guess it's okay, and then I'll gradually talk myself into it. Like as training camp comes, and then people are like, Bo's fucking ripping it on the practice field. I'll be like, all right, yeah, rock and roll and all that. But it won't be the same because I know damn well what they want to do, and I know what's going to happen. Like I already know that they have to wait for Washington to pick Daniels at 2. Once that happens, New England will trade them the 3 so that they can pick May. That's what's going to happen. And that's why I really think that's going to happen. And if something bizarre happens, like the Commanders taking May or the Bears taking May, which I really don't think is going to happen, then they have to sort of shift into whatever mode. But Kwesi already said, look, we have contingencies. Like, you have to prepare to be fucked, right? Like going against what Tom Moore said, like you have to prepare for it. And, I do have confidence that they have a plan, but I know what their first choice is. And I don't think they're going to be stopped in getting it, even if it means giving up 4 first rounders, which again, I won't have a problem with it because we've never done this before, and I'd like us to do it.
Well, and when it comes to the quarterbacks in general, I can be talked into a lot of them because Kenny Pickett was once a first-round draft pick, and I remember
he sucks.
thinking, I remember you talk about JT O'Sullivan. I remember on draft night where he just tweeted something like, "I just don't understand this at all." I mean, the guy was 24. He didn't throw the ball very hard. Jordan Addison did all the work for him, and there was nothing spectacular. Where each one of these guys, you can go look at these numbers from Bo Nix and say whatever you want, but wow, like 45 touchdowns and 3 picks, or look at Penix throw the ball. And that's the worst prospect that they've got this year. It's just one of those years where there's a lot of good quarterbacks, and sometimes it's 2020 and sometimes it's 2021, and we won't know for a while.
Well, the other thing is that Penix had a brilliant wideout in Odunze and made the absolute most out of him. And that meant a lot to me because of Justin, so, that makes a big difference to me. And, I should say that about Daniels too, because he had not one top 10 wideout, but probably 2, which is, that's kind of impressive too. But, I think I have to watch
me the most. Daniel scares me the most because I think he could get hurt, and I think he could get sacked a ton, and it could look like Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields, where the guy just doesn't throw it and drives you insane, and it's hard to win when a guy takes 45 sacks a year. That's my biggest concern about him.
I mean, because how often did I scream? All I did was scream, "Get rid of it" at Kirk for 6 years. So I don't want to do that again, So if you're telling me that Bo Nix can get rid of the ball quick, that's nice. I do like that.
Okay, here's my final fun question. You've been watching this team for a very, very long time.
I have.
And, I don't expect you to have memorized who's in the Ring of Honor, but I want you to tell me a player that will never be a Ring of Honor Viking player, that if it was Drew's Ring of Honor, you would put him in. Like, who would that be? That is not necessarily in the Randy Moss, Chris Carter sort of, Alan Page echelon, but meaningful to you that you would put in Drew's Viking Ring of Honor.
Winfield's in there, right?
I don't believe he is. No, I don't believe
Winfield then. Winfield. Yeah. If we had another corner like Winfield, and I think Rhodes should be in there, like, because when Rhodes was like peak Rhodes was like, he was really, really good. He did that thing where he'd limp off the field once a game, and I'd be absolutely horrified. And then he would come back in and shut everything down. But when he was good, he was so good. I really loved watching him play.
I'll tell you a quick Antoine Winfield personal tale. So I grew up watching the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, that's where I grew up, was in Buffalo. And when the Bills did not re-sign Antoine Winfield, that is when I declared as maybe a 14-year-old or something, like, I am not a fan of this team. Like, I'm just not. Like, if you let that guy go, I can't take your team seriously. And I never did again. Like, I never bought another jersey or fanboyed them ever. I was just completely done. I just went to the whole league and playing Madden and everything else, but I just I wouldn't even watch the games like with my dad. I'd just be like, you know what? I'm going to watch Favre and Aikman play in the afternoon, or whoever at that time. But I just couldn't take them seriously after they let a player of his caliber go. So I appreciate
By the way,
that
since you mentioned the Bills, you reminded me of Pat Williams, and Pat Williams was,
oh yes,
I think Pat Williams would be the guy. I think that would be my choice. I have his jersey. I love Pat Williams, and you've heard me praise big fat defensive tackles a lot. I would kill for another Pat Williams. That would be so cool. I'd really enjoy that.
Yeah, maybe we talked about it, but at one time the Bills had Ted Washington and Pat Williams on the field at the same time.
Oh my God. Oh, my dreams come true. That's so.
I'm pretty sure they led the league in run defense that year. So,
rocks. I loved having the Williams wall for X number of years, and just no one could ever run the ball. That was so cool. I missed that quite. Anytime someone runs the ball on us, I'm like, wait, that's not supposed to happen. I'm like, we're the Vikings. We're not supposed to.
And no matter how analyticsy I get, when a team runs the ball effectively, I'm like, yes. It feels like someone's strangling you to death when they're running and running and running and running. And that's why this, recent running game has been so frustrating to watch for the Vikings, because it's just not there. So you don't have the easy button.
And I think O'Connell wants it. I know I think that's part of the reason why he called so few runs, because he knew it wasn't working. But, I remember, when viral, when Brandon Staley, he's Brandon Staley's been deposed since then, but you know, he was like, look, you want to have a running game because it forces the opposing defense to work. They have to tackle. They have to get off their blocks. They have to do all this really tiring shit, and it sucks for them. So even if you only get a 2-yard gain out of it, you have still made their lives very, very annoying. And so I thought that was correct because I mean, I've played football, so I know how tiring defense gets, right? So that I think that was a good point. And so, you know, I'm excited to see them use Aaron Jones the way he ought to be used, and not mixing it in ass AJ Dillon for a vanity carry every 3 carries.
I don't understand their commitment to him, but they can keep.
He's got such big thighs.
It's just never scared me even a little bit when he's on the field. So anyway, well, Drew, the Defector, I think on the Defector Twitter, it says a good website. It's a great website. So people.
The last good website.
The last good website. Okay. The last great website. One of my favorite daily reads over at Defector. Make sure you check it out. If you are not familiar, I don't know how you could be at this point and not being familiar with Drew if you're a Vikings fan, but thanks, man. Well, I'm glad that we could get together, have a long form conversation instead of, little text and so forth. And we'll do it again some point soon. Thanks for doing this.
Honestly, you know, just have me on every week because like I said, I got no one else to talk about this shit with. So just do it. And we're getting May. It's going to happen.
Okay. Write it down.
I can give you the me. It's gonna be May.
Okay. Now you're not coming back to the show.
All right. You know what? It's fair.